welcome everyone. My name is Teresa Heighthouse. I'm here at the Prime Secretariat with Sue O'Keefe. And we have Milenko, Gudić, and Lawrence Pratt on the line also to present. This is the Prime Working Group on Poverty as a Challenge to Management Education and presenting the role of business and business schools. A little housekeeping before we get started. By default, everyone is on mute, but we will do a Q&A at the end, and if you have any questions, you can kindly use the raise hand button on the right, and we can unmute you. Otherwise, if you're having troubles with that, there's a chat section at the bottom that you can also use to type in a question. So we'll get started now, and Milenko will kick us off.
Thank you very much, Teresa. First of all, I would like to greet everyone who decided to take part of their precious time to join this event, and I would like to thank Prime Secretariat for making this event possible. Since this event is on the activities of the Prime Working Group on Poverty as a Challenge to Management Education, I would like also to express special thanks to all members of our working group, and we are now 120 individuals from 100 institutions from 42 countries. In the appendix of this presentation, you can find all the countries that are represented. So after looking at them, you may decide to join as someone representing new country or someone wanting to strengthen the presence of already existing individuals. Certainly we cannot create a critical mass, but we can create a core of people, enthusiasts who would like to contribute to alleviating global poverty, which is one of the most pressing concerns and issues in the world today. Why is it so? On the first slide, on the next slide, you will see a statement made by Jin Yong Kim, President of the World Bank, which says that still, after so many efforts, we have 1 billion people suffering from chronic poverty. There are trends, however, of decreasing this, but still a lot of things to do. And I would also like to remind you that these numbers should be taken with some reservation. On the next slide, you will see the trends in the last decades, which indicate that the poverty is declining steadily. But this diagram, graphic that you can see, is based on a poverty line defined at the level of $1.25 per day. If you increase this poverty line to $2 per day, you will get 1 billion more people who are considered as poor. And there are some other sources. One of the recent publication from a Swiss bank indicated that if you increase the poverty line to $10 per day, then you will have 80% of the population globally, worldwide, considered as poor. So this is really a problem both in developing countries as well as in established economy. During our activities in the working group, we heard, for instance, that in Scotland, 40% of population lives under the poverty line. And not only in Scotland, but also in the city of Glasgow, so in urban area, 40%. More about the inequalities you can find in Appendix 3, where we provided some materials, a video from a Harvard Business School professor and economist, and also Oxfam report, which was published for the occasion of the Global Economic Forum in Davos in Switzerland. All these provide dramatic figures, picture that really makes us think what we can do. Now, what we can do, in the next slide, there are some targets that the world would like to achieve. So by 2020, to reduce the global poverty to only 9% of the world population, and 10 years later to only 3%. This is with this reference of the poverty line. Even that looks very hard, but it also looks achievable. At least I think we all share our belief that it is achievable. Now, this is also related to some dilemmas that are presented in the next slide, because dealing with poverty is not an activity which is independent from other developments in the world. And these developments include things like population growth, which implies also increasing consumption due to the growth, but also due to better living conditions. And there are also, the consumption is growing in well-established economies and so on, but we are facing also other problems like climate changes, global warming. There are, of course, different views on all this, but we are all sure that our concern about the future of the planet is much higher than ever in the history of mankind. Although our technological power, our knowledge base has also never been higher. It sounds paradoxically, but this is the reality. And in this respect, we need to address the dilemma of growth. In other words, how much materialism versus how much quality of life. Basically, we need to answer the question, does growth necessarily mean development, or does development requires inevitably also growth? There are different views on that. Now, what is the role of different agents in this world? In the next slide, there are some key issues related to the role of business in society. We all are aware that businesses are in search of a new role in society, where the purpose of business would not be only to make profit, but also to be an active citizen contributing to the wealth, contributing to the world. So we talk about triple bottom line, economically sound businesses, but also environmentally friendly, socially responsible, and so on. Related to this is also the role of educational institutions, and particularly the role of business schools in society. If for no other reason than because business schools are the places where business leaders are formed and educated. And of course, then we need to discuss the relationship between business schools, businesses, and societies at large. In the next slide, I would like to focus on two agents which are close to all of us. And the title is What Businesses and Business Schools Could Do for a Better World. Do they do anything? Of course they do. In 2000, United Nations Global Compact was established. They formulated 10 principles, and the main idea was to help the current generation of executives, of business leaders, to do something for a better world. The latest document, every year when they have Global Leaders Summit, they produce some documents, but this one, I would say, is a milestone, Architect of a Better World, building the post-2015 business engagement architecture. And it is a milestone or a critical point because the Millennium Development Goals are now expiring, and the idea is to replace them with Sustainable Development Goals. And in this process, called post-2015 process, not only businesses, but all other actors are supposed to participate and contribute. Now, PRIME, Principles for Responsible Management Education, was established in 2007 as a wing, I would say, educational wing of the UN Global Compact. Why? Because in addition to addressing current generation of executives, leaders, and managers, the need was also to address the future generation. And the best way to address the future generation is to ask schools to contribute. This PRIME formulated 6 principles, which are purpose, values, method, research, partnership, and dialogues. And this provides a framework for a work that has been growing. And now, if I'm not wrong, PRIME gathers more than 550 schools from 80 countries from all over the world. There have been 5 annual assemblies, 3 global forums, and 2 summits. And in the meantime, PRIME developed some internal structure entities to address certain issues. So we have working groups, one of which is our working group on poverty as a challenge to management education, but there are others on corruption, on gender inequality, and so on. Recently, a PRIME champion group was established to take lead, to bring innovation, to show the way for the others. And equally important, and perhaps maybe even more importantly, now we have PRIME regional chapters already established or emerging, one can say almost mushrooming in different regions of the world, whose main task is to contribute to the impact. If champions have the task to address the issue of innovation, then regional chapters have to enable broader, deeper, and wider impact. Now, on the next slide, we see the businesses have already been doing something. I would like to mention a book, a famous book that Prahalad wrote on fortune at the bottom of the pyramid. Just to mention perhaps what, at least for me personally, was his main message, and that is that economic development should go hand in hand with social transformation, which means that we should address poor not only as potential consumers, but also as active actors and partners in development. This slide represents the result of a very interesting initiative taken by UNDP, Growing Inclusive Market Initiative, which shows that the businesses around the world have developed a very innovative and successful strategies to address a number of constraints related to poor regions. And our working group has learned a lot from this approach, and we also took notion that this project has developed 100 cases of successful business strategies. Unfortunately, these cases have not been developed into standard case studies that could be used in the classroom. And that is one of the tasks that our working group would like to take in the near future. Businesses also do other things, like, for instance, Oxfam initiative on poverty, blueprint, and so on. Some of this you can find in the appendix of this presentation. Let me now come back to the role of business schools. In the next slide, you will see that CEEMAN conducted a survey on business school responses to global crisis in 2009. We asked faculty and administrators in business schools worldwide on what their perception of the crisis was. Was it perceived as financial, because in 2008 we talked about financial crisis, or was it something deeper? And the answer was almost unanimous. They said, no, it's much deeper. The crisis is not only financial, it is economic, it is social, and almost 3/4 of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that above all, the crisis is ethical and moral in its nature. And then there was a question, okay, and what is the share of responsibility that business schools have for the crisis? To these questions, faculty, both faculty and administrators were very reluctant to answer yes, there is a share, or there is an important share. And later on, when we discuss how come that you don't feel responsible if you are the institution, the place where business leaders and other leaders are for. And the answer was, you know, we cannot change attitudes and values with which our participants, our students come to our institutions. This is what was or is a very surprising answer, because if you look at the marketing material, the way business schools market or present themselves to the customers, to other stakeholders, they say, yes, we provide knowledge, but more importantly, we develop new skills, and then they add, even more importantly, we'll help students and participants to change their mental mindset, to the way they see the world, their values and their attitudes. So if this is what they claim they do, then there should be more consistency. They should walk the talk. Otherwise, it sounds like hypocrisy. You know. In the next slide, there are some questions related to this issue of whether schools are responsible, should be responsible, what kind of managers and leaders we need for a better world. And we should be glad to say that these questions have not been unaddressed, unattended. For instance, the last Prime Global Forum held in Rio in 2012 discussed the topic of management education for the future we want. And this event was held in the context of Rio +20 conference on the future we want. So what kind of management education for the future we want? And we developed there all together collective effort with a lot of inputs from all over the world, a huge number of inspirational suggestions, and not only suggestions, also solutions regarding what kind of management education for the future we want. In 2013 Prime Summit, which was held last September in Bled in Slovenia, the topic was new ways of developing leaders for the future we want. So what are the innovations that we need? And we discussed that in the concept that was designed for the event, but which in fact reflects the whole spirit of Prime. Inspiration, innovation, implementation, and impact. And we tried to focus on the impact. Now I would like to say a few more words on the working group. Our working group, in fact, started before it was formally established. In 2008, we conducted a global survey, first of the kind, on management education, corporate social responsibility, and poverty. That was a global survey, and which was very encouraging with the results. because the results told us that 2/3 of faculty and administrators considered global poverty as a very serious problem, while almost 3/4 of faculty and administrators considered poverty as a legitimate topic for management education. This was very encouraging, but the survey also indicated that there were numerous innovations taking place. So 2 years later, we tried to grasp this innovation and to see where they are, in which segments of management education, and what parts of the educational system and process they cover. And again, it was a number of good news. Innovations took place in all segments of education, from undergraduate, postgraduate, executive education, including also PH studies. And they addressed all 4 major aspects of the management education: the program, the process, including materials, tools, faculty, students, as well as institutional arrangements and partnership. So we identify a potential for further elaboration and exposure of these best practices so that everybody can learn from them. We organized a workshop in Bled in order to see how to continue, and we decided to continue in a way to respond to an invitation that we received from Prime Secretariat, and that was to produce some deliverables for the 3rd Global Forum in Rio. And we conducted a survey on fighting poverty through management education, challenges, opportunities, and solutions. So we wanted to identify the key challenges, opportunities, and also solutions for fighting poverty through management education. This was really global survey with 435 responses from 70 countries. We were glad that this effort was supported also by Equal, which is an association of European associations devoted to the quality of management education, because according to their policy, they provide sponsorship only to projects that are of interest not only for business schools, but also for business community. So in a way that was provided us with an additional legitimacy. What did we discover? In the next slide, you can see what were the challenges. One of the challenges, understanding the language. And here I would like to say that from the very beginning, we had a debate whether to use the word poverty or something else. And something else was low income markets, inclusive markets, and so on. But we decided to stay with the poverty because the word is clear, you know, and it sends a message. There were also questions regarding the legitimacy of the topic, and concerns were expressed whether businesses or students are interested. Now, the good thing is that practice, in fact, denies or opposes this opinion. As already described earlier, businesses are not only interested, they are very active and very creative, and young people are also very active and very creative, and they would like to play a role rather than to wait, you know. One of the challenges was related to prevailing mindsets, attitudes, silo mentality, and so on. The problem here is, and this is a problem everywhere in education, there is a tendency to go deeper and deeper into a discipline, to create new knowledge, higher value knowledge. This is absolutely legitimate, and we need deeper knowledge. But we forget that understanding is not disciplinary. Knowledge is disciplinary, but understanding or dealing with complex issue, that can never be disciplinary. It should be multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary, and cross-disciplinary. So we have to deal with this silo mentality. There are concerns about overpacked curriculum and so on, lack of qualified experts whose teaching would be based on relevant research, so there is an issue of faculty development. And I'm glad, if you allow me to mention, that our International Management Teachers Academy that we have in CEEMAN in GLED last year introduced a new disciplinary track on how to teach business in society, including how to integrate the issue of poverty. So, and there is within PRIME now a faculty development working group and also subgroup on faculty development with the champion. So there will be an intensive dialogue on how to resolve or how to deal with this challenge. Publishing multidisciplinary work has always been a challenge, and we need to deal with that. External incentives, there are some improvements because recently CEEMAN incorporated PRIME principles into accreditation standards and system for institutional accreditation, AMBA also program for program accreditation, and from last year we also have EFND following this, AACSB is also on the way, so this challenge is now addressed in the best possible way, and that is by international association. In the next slide there are some solutions, and I would like very briefly to mention the most important ones. Can I have the next slide, please? On solutions. Solutions are close to home. So you can do best there where you are, because I call this, there are three principles. One is surface of touch. You are in touch with everyone, with students, with colleagues, with deans and so on. So there is the radius of trust depends on you, and there is a control over destiny that depends only on you. And these kind of approaches have proven to be most effective. Co-curricular activities were a good and proactive or creative response to earlierly mentioned issue of overpacked curricula. Very important and very innovative were solutions in the area of action and service learning project. In other words, experiential learning. And this will be emphasized also later on in the presentation when we come to the conference in Nicaragua. Some schools integrated graduation requirements, that some schools developed strategies for legitimizing the topic, and quite a few schools used their participation in PRIME to provide legitimacy for addressing challenges and for producing new solutions. Of course, there are many new opportunities. In the next slide you can see some of them, and we are dealing with them, creating a strong and compelling business and educational case. So again, we need to convince both businesses and management institutions that there is a case to introduce poverty-related issues into management education. Find and leverage champions. The experience and the surveys have shown that the best results have been achieved in schools who had either champions, prime champions, or prime type of champions, or deans that were supportive of these champions, or both. So that can change stakeholders' attitudes, and also there is a lot to do in the area of sharing best practices, developing the right vocabulary against to convince, stakeholders and so on, and obviously closer working relationship with cooperation, because that opens the door for research, but it also opens the door for innovations and for collaboration, developing new teaching materials and so on. In the next slide you will only see the two documents that we produced for the Rio, and that in fact contain what I was trying to describe now. So on the left side, you can see global report on fighting poverty through management education, challenges, opportunities, and solutions. And there is a link, you know. And another one is collection of best practices and inspirational solutions, a collection of one-pager documents describing what was the innovation that a teacher would like to share with others on how to integrate poverty into teaching. And this collection contains 13 different categories: cases, articles, books, non-academic articles, videos, pictures, experiential learning activities, projects, assignments, speakers, invited speakers, online activities, new course design, new programs, and so on, research. So you can not only find some solutions there, but you all are kindly invited to contribute, because this collection is envisaged as an online platform to which participants can contribute and from which they can benefit. And in the next slide, you will see where we are now after presenting these two documents, and also in the Academy of Management meeting in 2012 in Boston, which was a prime hosted session. We met publishers, Greenleaf Publishers, and they invited us to write a book on how to integrate poverty into management education. In our discussions, we discovered that it would be better to write two books, one on why to do that and another one how to do that. Now, at this stage, we have finished the first book, Why to Integrate Poverty into Management Education, and the title of the book is Socially Responsible Organization and the Challenge of Poverty. This book will be formally inaugurated or launched in our event in Manaqua in July, 28th, 30th of July, while the second book has just started. We are now in the process. And we will have also one conference, big conference, hosted by Bocconi in Milan, Italy, in the context of a big global event, Expo 2015. These future activities we discussed in a series of workshops in Bled at the occasion of the third Prime Summit and CEEMAN Annual Conference. And I'm glad to share with you that these 4 workshops, one of which was meeting youth, Challenge Future project with 30,000 people, young people from 2,000 schools in 200 countries. These workshops were the most populated side events of the Prime Summit. While thanking all of you for your attention and apologizing that I took too much time, I would like now to ask Lawrence Pratt to introduce our host, the INCAE School, and the conference that will be held there in July this year.
Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Lawrence Pratt. I'm a faculty member at INCAE Business School, where I also direct our research and impact center programs. I want to give you a brief background on INCAE and on the event we're having at the end of July. And I'd like to thank Milenko for that excellent introduction, and to the Prime for being our partners on this. Could I please have, I hope, the next slide, which slides on the conference? Okay. INCAE is a regional private graduate business school. I'm sorry, the next slide, please, the one on INCAE. Thank you. INCAE is a regional graduate business school. We've been around, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary this year. We were set up with the help of President Kennedy and leaders of the private sector of Central America. We're a private, not-for-profit, nonpartisan organization with a very, very clear development-oriented mission, which I'll explain in a second. We have campuses in Costa Rica and Nicaragua. The event in July will be on our Nicaragua campus. And our school, we basically do 3 things. We have MBA programs. We have a fairly robust executive ed program, which brings in about 5,000 people per year into our programs. and our impact research. We focus primarily as an institution on applied research, again, largely based on our mission. Next slide, please. We're an unusual business school. Our mission actually is explicitly a development one. We serve the countries primarily of Central America, but also more broadly Latin America and the Caribbean. And we were set up in 1964 with the mission that you have there on the screen, which is to promote the development of the countries we serve by enhancing leadership skills, practices, attitudes, and values. We had development and reduction of poverty built in as one of the primary goals of our existence, to help Central America figure out how it fits in the world, and to create opportunities, jobs, and other aspects of well-being for our region's population. Next slide, please. So during our history, we've been engaged in many different activities. This is just a few of the items. In the 1970s, early as 1972, Manaqua, Nicaragua, was hit with one of the most devastating earthquakes ever. The city and all of its institutions, literally all of its institutions physically, were destroyed. And INCAE wound up being the lead organization to coordinate the rebuilding of Manaqua. In the 1980s, as the world economy transformed, INCAE was called upon by the region's governments, with help from the U.S. and a few European countries, to try to figure out how to reorient a poverty-stricken rural sector, still heavily dependent on agriculture, but agriculture hundreds of years old technology, and INCAE led those efforts. 1980s and 90s, early 90s, a very dark period in Latin America, hyperinflation, extreme poverty, political conflict, spill over to the Cold War. INCAE was the lead organization in Central America, Venezuela, and Colombia, and Ecuador to try to figure out how to get the countries out of hyperinflation and out of deep economic trouble that was so deeply affecting the well-being of the great majority of the population. Then with our region a little bit more stable in the 1990s, INCAE began focusing on sustainable development as the guiding principle for all of our institutional research work. Next slide, please. Through our research center, impact centers, which I direct, CLACS, you see there with the very strange acronyms, the Latin American Center for Competitiveness and Sustainable Development, became INCAE's principal vehicle for applied research. And today, since 1996, pretty much 100% of everything we do is designed to have impact in the intersection of social, environmental, economic, and institutional development. So our core areas of impact-oriented applied research and processes, we don't stop at research, we very much go into change processes, right now focuses on different elements of poverty alleviation, a lot of programs now on access to energy and how we adjust or manage both energy markets and generating capacity to meet the needs of people who are off-grid or who do not have enough energy to improve their quality of life. We have centers that work on agricultural market access for small and medium-sized agricultural producers. We worked heavily in microfinance and in the last 3 or 4 years on green finance, crossing environmentally sound finance with small and medium business. And of course, entrepreneurship and business climate issues that are so critical to our region. And right now, about 3/4 of our faculty's academic research, in addition to our applied research, focuses generally on those areas. So we have a fairly deep, or rather deep now, institutional commitment to addressing sustainability, and within the umbrella of sustainability, poverty alleviation for our region. Next slide, please. So within that context, we're delighted to be the host partner for the conference you see on your screen, Leveraging Innovative and Cross-Country Learning for Poverty Reduction, coordinated with our colleagues at Prime and Milenko and our other partners here online. We'll be hosting it on our campus in Nicaragua, July 28 to 30. the end of the presentation, you'll see the contact information. Nicaragua is a spectacularly beautiful, interesting, safe, fun country to visit. It had a very rough periods, and it's known for its complex political situation, primarily in the 80s and 90s. But now it's a pretty dynamic country, trying to find its way forward economically, socially, environmentally. We have a lovely campus in the hills just outside Manaqua. The country is I believe currently the lowest crime and violence rate in all of Latin America, or currently second, I think, behind Canada. So feel safe and come to see a beautiful, interesting country, and what we hope will be an extremely interesting conference. If I can have the next slide, please. We're trying very specifically to do something different with this conference, all the organizers. This is not just an academic conference where we come and talk. We have invited people at the forefront of the design of poverty reduction programs in business, from both the business side and the not-for-profit side. We have academicians who are pushing the frontiers in Latin America and elsewhere who will be sharing what they do. And we are not just going to be stuck on our campus, although our campus is really quite comfortable and quite beautiful. But we're going to be doing off-campus learning and innovation laboratory. We're going to be moving around a bit, seeing projects, seeing initiatives, seeing companies doing interesting things with the base of the pyramid, and seeing base of the pyramid organizations doing interesting things connecting to international markets. So we're going to be mixing traditional conference. We have some papers, of course. We'll have great breakout sessions, and we'll have field experience, and it will be all coordinated and led by our faculty and research teams who have years of experience working with these organizations and working in the Nicaraguan context. So we hope you will be able to enjoy it, visiting and participating in this event, and we ask that you please share information about this conference with your colleagues. And on the page right now, you'll find the contact information, or through the links on this webinar, we can also get you in touch with all the specific information. The period for submitting papers has closed, but we will be delighted to have as many participants who are interested in coming. As I said, the format is not just about papers, it's about learning and real exchange of ideas with people who are at the forefront of these issues. So with that, I'll close and pass it back to Milenko.
Well, I would pass to the organizers and to ask for any questions.
Yes, so thank you for the presentation. We have time for question and answer, and if anyone would like to raise their hand, I can unmute you from our end, and then you might have to unmute yourself as well, or you can use the chat function to ask a question. Or if the presenters have any questions for each other, they can also speak up.
Well, my question would be to the Secretariat, how do you see this kind of activity in the context of prime involvement in the post-2015 agenda?
Well, for one, the working groups are certainly Prime's way of sort of developing and sharing information that's important to the community in the management education context. So the materials that the Working Group on Poverty develops are obviously invaluable to the rest of the Prime community. And in the post-2015 process, right now, as they're collecting and deliberating what the new sustainable development goals will be, or potential sustainable development goals will be, there are opportunities for the academic community to also have their say and their voice heard in the process. And so I think the working groups are a great introduction to that, in that they provide an overview and also the impact that's being taken by the education community, and can be a good outlet to voice the management education community's desire to change the private sector as well, and the role of the private sector in the coming 15 and 20, 50 years. Sue, do you have any comment on that?
No, I think pretty much we covered all the different points.
And if nobody else has any questions, we can wrap up. There's an appendix at the end of the slides, and all of the slides and the recordings are going to be made available online through the PRIME website, and I imagine also on the CEEMAN website, so that you can see more information on the PRIME Anti-Poverty Working Group, more information on the conference, and INCAE's good work as well. So with that, we'd like to close.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.